Quick question as we begin this morning. Who uses social media? Yeah, you do, mother. Always on it, always on it. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You're a TikTok star, aren't you? No, you're not. No. Well, I was looking up about usage of social media just this week, and I guess I wasn't that surprised. This was like up to the minute, latest data tells me that the average use for social media, I think it's probably across the world, if you use social media, the average use is 2 hours, 31 minutes a day. That's a lot, right? 2 hours, 31 minutes. And then there was another, this is from last month data. It's like it's going up every month. And if you're kind of a young person, if you're aged 16 to 24, that goes up to 3 hours, 11 minutes a day. And I was thinking about me, and I immediately checked my own screen time, like, what do I do? And I use 18 minutes a day. Okay, which I was thinking, that's quite good. But then I thought, well, if I only use 18 minutes and the average is 2.5 hours, it means that somebody else is using a lot more, right? Which makes me feel better about me, because I'm not using as much as them, but maybe I should use less. Anyway, I don't know why, well, I do know why I've gone into that. It's a huge chunk of our lives, or of people's lives, are spent on social media. And if you're wondering where I'm going with this, I'm not about to spend a whole series bashing social media. Although that would be valid. I'm not going to do that. That's not what this series is about, okay? Because actually there are some good elements to social media. If you don't use social media, this series is still for you, okay? If you're not a young person, this series is definitely still for you. If you're a churchgoer, if you're not normally a churchgoer, this series is still for you. The issue that we're going to address in this series is a everybody issue. All right, this is an all of us issue. This is an issue that I think all of us have to come to terms with or have to deal with in our own lives. And the great news is this series is going to fix this problem once and for all. We're going to make the world a better place, all right? By the time we get to the end of the series, I like your faith there, Daniel. That's great. Anybody want to know what this series is? It's called Be Real. Authenticity in an image-obsessed world. All right, be real, authenticity in an image-obsessed world. You see, we have this tendency in us to want to portray an image of ourselves that maybe is not as accurate as it could be. Probably that's less true for the older generation, because when you get older, you kind of start to not care what people think, don't you? Anybody watched that program, Grumpy Old Men? The old program where they were just ranting about life in general. Well, I'm now 50. I was born in 1973. I'm now 50, and I'm getting to that place where you start to care less about what people think about you. But I still think, even if you're a grumpy old man or a grumpy old woman, you still, I think, put on an image in some regards, in some sphere. I think there's something in all of us that stops us from being completely authentic. We want to present something different. And on one level, I was thinking about this, it's not necessarily a bad thing to do that, because we have to get by in society, right? We have to get by. We can't go around just splurging everybody out to anybody who has to say how our day is going. This week, I went to Costa Coffee. I sometimes go there if I'm preparing a message, and it was a double bonus because it was my birthday. They'd sent me a voucher for a free cake. And so Fru said, look, why don't you go and prepare your message? It was on Tuesday. Go to Costa, get your free cake. I also had a free coffee reward on my app, so I thought, okay, free coffee, free cake, what's not to like? And I was in there. There weren't many people in there. And the barista was making my coffee, and she said to me, how's your day going? And I said what I always say when a stranger asks me how my day is going. Probably you say it too. I said, fine, thanks. Fine, thanks. Maybe you recognize that. Fine, thanks. And then I got my coffee and I sat down and I started thinking about what if, because I was talking about being real, what if I was actually real in that moment? What if I'd been honest with this poor girl? Said, well, actually, our foster child was up all night. He woke me up at 5:10 and he was screaming. And normally he drinks his milk and then he goes back to bed for a sleep. But he didn't this morning. And I didn't want Fru, because if I'm honest, Fru normally is the one that gets up with him. But I thought I wouldn't let Fru have a line because she's been getting up for the last few days. So I got up with him and I took him downstairs and I started playing with him. But then I realized he'd filled his nappy. So I started to change his nappy. And then I realized it'd gone all up his back and all over his clothes. So now I'm taking his clothes off and trying to wipe him down, trying to clean him. It's 5:30 in the morning. I'm really, really tired. And then I realized, oh no, his clothes are in the drawers next to our bed where Fru is sleeping. So I have to go into the bedroom and I end up waking Fru up anyway. And don't get me started on the fact that we shouldn't even have a baby anyway. We do mother and baby placements, not baby placements. And here we are with a baby and it's slowly killing me. Yeah, thanks. I thought we were done with babies 6 years ago when we had our last child. That was a surprise. Don't get me started on that. And now I've got to prepare a new series for the church that I help run, and I've got no ideas. And I'm also preaching Sunday evening. I'm preaching for the next few weeks. And if I don't get something down on paper soon, I'm going to go mad. Maybe you should make that a double shot coffee. I didn't say that. What I said was, I'm fine, thanks. And I went on with my day and she went on with hers. But actually I think it's good that we do that, right? It's probably a good thing, because nobody would get anything done if we went around wearing our heart on our sleeves and was completely honest about how we really are all of the time. So we can't exactly do that. But that's not what we're challenging in this series. What I want to challenge and what I feel compelled to look at and what I feel God is asking us to look at in this series is when we start spending so much time and so much effort on the image of ourselves that there isn't much time and effort left to actually work on the real us, which I think is a problem. We spend so much effort creating and maintaining an image, and our image becomes more important than the truth. There's a new social media app that I downloaded a few weeks ago, which is actually called Be Real. I don't know if any of you have seen it or heard of it or downloaded it. And this is supposed to do away with the kind of whole fake Instagram, airbrushed, filtered images. You're supposed to. The point of this app is it sends you a notification once a day, everybody at the same time. And in that moment, you've got 2 minutes to take a picture of what you're doing. And it takes a picture with the rear camera, so it shows what you're doing, and also the front camera. Well, I kept forgetting that it was taking a picture with the front camera as well, and so I ended up taking pictures like that, looking kind of gormless and lots of people unfriended me. The app is supposed to stop people worrying about images like this online. That's me and Costa, by the way, in Ferndown. And it's trying to get us to be real. But it doesn't really do that, because you're still ultimately deciding whether you're going to actually post it or not. And you can still take the picture again and again until you're happy with it. But that's exactly what I want to do in this series. I want us to get to a point where we are just that much more authentic, where we stop being concerned with how we appear and be much more focused on how we actually are. Who we are trying to convince people that we are. What is it that we want people to say about us when they're talking to their friends about us, when they're describing us to our friends? How can we become that rather than trying to wear that mask? Because I think, in some way we all want to be seen or known for something. To my kids, I want to be known as a dad who is fun and strong and reliable and cool. To my wife, why did somebody laugh then? To my wife, I want to be known as somebody who is handsome and trustworthy and smart and sexy. To people around me, to you guys, I want to be known as somebody who's reliable and hardworking and organized and responsible. And I was thinking about, why do I want people to think that about me? I think probably because I'm not naturally that. And growing up, I wasn't that. I remember last week I told you about my reports and my effort grades, which were always quite low. I didn't really put much effort in. I wasn't very organized. I wasn't particularly hardworking as a young person. And now I try and make up for it by wanting to appear that I am now that. And I put all my effort into being that. Why do I do this? Well, I was thinking about why. Why do I try and make people think that I am that? And I think, well, actually, it's your fault that I'm like that because you want me to be like that. You don't want somebody to ask you and say, what's your pastor like? And you say, oh, well, he's a bit lazy. Actually, he's a bit of an idiot. He's a bit of a dimwit. He's a bit neurotic. You prefer that I keep up the image of somebody who is reliable and hardworking and smart and studious. And so I do. So I blame you. It's your fault. So what about you? What do you want to be known for? Maybe there's something that you're not or you weren't when you were younger, and you want people to think that about you now. Are there things in your past that make you strive to be different? And what do you do when you realize you're not that person? You have two choices. Your first choice, you can either work on becoming that. You can do the hard yards, you can get disciplined and start to try and become that different person, which is hard work. Or the second choice is you can just work on the image of you. You can just try and present that as a front. You can pretend that you're that, a fake version of you, or the Instagram or Facebook version of you. And this second option is a whole lot easier than the first option, putting in the discipline to become that. But ultimately, it doesn't work. Everybody gets found out in the end because it's built on air. It's not real. And at some point, we'll get deflated. And the truth is, we know the truth about ourselves, even if other people don't. And then the fake image of us won't bring the satisfaction to us that we ultimately want, because we know deep down who we are. And maybe right now you're thinking, yes, but actually it's good to be aspirational. It's good to be wanting to be better. And I would agree, actually that's absolutely right. It's good for us to pursue better, to become a better person, to do what we spoke about a lot in the last series, which is God working on us, taking on us a journey to become all that He's created us to be. But I do think that sometimes we focus so much on our reputation over our character. And our reputation actually is what others think we are, whereas our character is actually what we are. Our reputation is what others think we are, and our character is what we actually are. We want to be seen as stronger than we are, maybe. We want to be seen as wiser than we are, and smarter than we are, or richer than we are, or funnier than we are, more disciplined than we are, more successful than we are, more qualified than we are. An image is a lot quicker than character to deal with because it's shallower. It doesn't take quite so much work. If you've had teenage children, or if you've got teenage children, you probably have the same conversation that I do. Sometimes I see their bedrooms and it's a mess. There's stuff, I look, I'm not going to name names right now, but the room can be like a real tip. There's stuff all over the floor, stuff all over the bed, stuff all over the desk. And I go and say, go and tidy your room. And they go and tidy their, or they go up upstairs, and then they come down 2 minutes later and they say, it's done. And at that point, alarm bells start to ring in my head because it's been like 2 minutes. And do I believe that they possibly have cleaned their room in 2 minutes, judging, knowing how bad it was when I saw it? So I go up and tentatively open the door just to see what they've done. And lo and behold, it's clear. The floor's clear, the bed's clear, and the desk is clear. But I still don't believe it. So I go in and I open up the wardrobe. And it's all there, just crammed in a wall of clothes and stuff that's not folded. And now you see the child has got an even bigger problem. It's going to take them even longer because now they've got to sort it out from the wardrobe before they put it away properly. And it takes them twice as long as it did when we started. And they look at me and they say, how did you know? I say, well, I'm a parent and I used to be a teenager. I know what goes on. Hiding the mess away is a lot quicker. It's a lot easier. But the mess is still there, it's just hidden. And at some point it's going to need to be dealt with. and we're going to have to deal with it. There's a version of the old saying, isn't it? Sweeping stuff under the rug so you can't see it. It's still there, and at some point you're going to have to deal with it. And creating an image can give an impression that everything's okay, everything's as it should be. And actually there is a point at which there is something in us that starts almost to believe the image that we portray. We don't believe it fully. There's a great quote from this guy. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, but I've written it there if you want to write it down. Who said this: "We are so accustomed to disguise ourselves to others that in the end we become disguised to ourselves." And I was thinking about this. How many times have we seen a successful person come undone, their life unravel, as the truth about them, they seem to have it all together, whether it was a politician or a celebrity or even a church leader. And they seem to be kind of doing great, and then suddenly you start to hear truths about their life that you didn't know, and it all starts to come out, and it's tragic. We realize it was all a facade. God is one person who isn't fooled by our facade, by the image. And deep down in each of us, we know that. Everybody knows it. And there is something in us that knows it as well. There's an interesting moment in the book of 1 Samuel where the king Saul is not doing very well. He's been king of Israel, has been made king of Israel, and he's messed up a few times. And so God sends Samuel to the house of Jesse to find the next king. And I'm sure most of you know the story. It's a great Sunday school story. But one by one, Jesse brings his sons in. There's seven sons. And Samuel sees these sons, and he says, "Man, they look great. This guy, this first one who comes in, he looks perfect. He's definitely king material. Like, he's got to be the one." And then God says this to Samuel. He says, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." You see, and gradually, more and more, the other 6 brothers come in, and each one is rejected. God says, no, I'm looking at the heart, you're looking at the outward, even though they seem that they're king material. I'm looking at what's going on the inside. And eventually Samuel says, "Is there no one else?" And Jesse says, "Yeah, well, I've got one more, but he's just a young boy. He's out there looking after the sheep." And so he brings in David, and God says, "Yeah, that's a man after my own heart. He may not have all the goods yet. He may not be king material yet, but what he's going to do is you're going to anoint him now to be king, and he's going to go back into the field with his sheep, and he's going to work on the stuff that needs working on, and we're going to work on this together, and by the time he is king, he's going to be the king that you need." The Lord looks at the heart. Why has God rejected the first one? He said, "I have rejected him because of the hidden stuff, because of the stuff that you can't see." The image looks great, but he's rejected on the things that you can't see. And God sees us as we actually are, not as we want to be seen, not as we present ourselves to the rest of the world. Proverbs 10 verse 9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity," and this is a great word, isn't it? Great, it's like wholeness. Whoever walks in wholeness, whoever is the same in every sphere of life. He's not somebody different at home than he is with his friends. He's not somebody different at work than he is at church. Somebody with integrity is the same. He's not putting on an image at any point. He's just himself. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. And that's what happens if we are trying to kind of create an image of ourselves. We will ultimately be found out. So this series then, Be Real. Be Real. Authenticity. What are we actually looking at? What does it mean to be authentic? I was looking for a quote to try and find out what is authenticity? What does it actually mean? And there's this lady, Brené Brown, who is I'm pretty sure she's a Christian lady, but she's written lots of books on this stuff. She's also one of the 5 most watched TED Talks, actually, as well. Very, very smart lady. She says this: authenticity is the daily practice of letting go who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. And that's a great starting place. I love the idea that she called it a daily practice. This is not something that you make a decision of today and then job done forever. This is something that I think we all will need to come back to and combat again and again throughout actually the entirety of our lives. We have to be working on being authentic always. It's a daily practice. Letting go of who we think we're supposed to be. It's a good starting place. But I do have a little bit of an issue with the last thing, embracing who we are. Now, obviously, it's good to be confident in who we are, but I also think there's a biblical thing that goes beyond this. There's a Jesus follower thing that goes beyond just embracing who we are. Because as Jesus followers, I think we're called to go on a journey, to be something more, to be something better. If the point of being real is just to accept who I am, then where is the encouragement to become someone better, to become what God is calling me to be? So it's about making sure that the real me, that I'm really being, is who I really want to be. That's what being real is. Being real is making sure that the real me that I am really being is who I really want to be. Who God has called me to be. Because if I'm a muppet, if I'm an actual muppet and I'm being real, that's not going to work for me or for you. If I've got stuff, messed up stuff, I know we all have, but if I'm not dealing with that, that's not going to work for me. I've got to deal with these issues. And in this series, I want us to be real, but I want to encourage us to become the best version of ourselves that we can. And maybe that means that we stop trying to boost our self-esteem by getting likes and thumbs up and hearts, metaphorically and in reality as well. I was reading a book by Tim Keller this week, a book called Self-Forgetfulness, a great book. And he makes this statement. He says, if someone has a problem with low self-esteem, we in our modern world seem to have only one way of dealing with it, and that is remedying it with high self-esteem. We've all been there. I've been doing it this week, actually, with somebody who comes and says, oh, I'm rubbish, or I'm not very good, or I'm a failure at this. And what do? You go, no, you're great, you're really good, you can do this, you've got this. Look at what you've accomplished. You start to try and fill them with high self-esteem. When somebody feeling bad about themselves, we tell them they're a great person. We remind them of all that they've accomplished. We tell them, don't worry about what others say. Don't worry about what others say about you. Just kind of be true to yourself. Evaluate yourself, set your own standards. But the Bible gives us a different path. And we see this when God is talking to Moses and when God is talking to Daniel. Both of these guys and others as well, they come before God and God gives them a task and they say, I can't do it. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. God doesn't go, yes, you are. I called you because you've got all the goods. You can do this. He doesn't say that. What he says to both of those guys, he says, I am with you. Yeah, I know that about you. But I am with you. You can do this not because you're great, but because I am with you. God uses the weak in us. God's power is made perfect in our weakness, right? And there's the Apostle Paul talking to the Corinthian church a little bit about this. There's pride and there's division. Right at the beginning of this first letter to the Corinthians, he makes this statement. This is brilliant. I love it. He says, I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. So Paul is there. This is a guy who's got a lot to be proud of. He says, like, I don't care what you think of me. I don't care how you judge me. I don't care what you say about me. I don't care what you whisper about me. I don't care if you're pointing out my flaws. I don't care. I care very little if I'm judged by you. But he goes on. He says, indeed, I do not even judge myself. I don't care what you think, and I don't care what I think. Neither of those two things matter. My conscience is clear. That's good. But that does not make me innocent. He said, I have a clear conscience. I think I'm always doing the right thing. But that doesn't make me innocent. I still know that I'm a sinner in the sight of God. What does he say in one of his later letters? He says, God has come to save us, save sinners, of whom I am the worst. This is the Apostle Paul talking about himself. And he's not looking for somebody to go, oh no, you're not. You're fine. Try and boost his self-esteem. That's not what he's after. He's saying, it kind of doesn't matter what I say about me or what you say about me. It's the Lord who judges me. I'm going to base my opinion of myself on who God says about me. And that should give us confidence when we do that. He would say to us, don't try and boost your self-esteem by living up to the standards of others, by living up to your parents' standards or your kids' standards or your work colleagues' standards or even society standards. Don't do that. And he says, don't try and boost your self-esteem by living up to your own standards, because either you still won't be able to meet it and you'll feel bad, or you'll set your standards so low that you'll feel bad because you realize that you're a person who sets low standards. And don't try and get your self-esteem by creating something false, by creating an image of yourself and getting likes. That's not going to ultimately give you the esteem you're looking for. The only way to get it is come to God and let him say who you are. The only way to be real, to be authentic, to be confident, is to pay attention to the one who made you. And he says, you are righteous in his sight. He says you are saved and loved and redeemed and holy and blameless. He says all these amazing things about you. And what's great is, and we're going to touch on this, talk about this more in later, in every sphere of life, we base our verdict on ourselves, on our performance. We think, how did I perform? Here's the verdict. But in a relationship with God, our verdict comes first. And then our performance, we base our performance on the verdict that we already have. The verdict is, God looks at us and he doesn't see sin. He sees Christ in us. And so that's what our performance is based on, the verdict that he's given us. Paul, writing to the Philippians, says, only let us live up to what we have already attained. Only. Do only this. Don't try and live in any other way other than by living up. We should be living in an upwards direction, not a static, not living down, not pulling ourselves down, not pulling others down, but we should be living heavenwards because of what we've already been given, what we've already attained, what God's already said about us. He's told us we are a new creation. He's told us that we are blameless. He's told us that we are righteous. He's told us that we are good. Not because we perform that way, but because he's made us that way because of what Jesus has done. What's the point in growing in relationship with God and with Jesus and with the Holy Spirit if it's not affecting the way that we live? So we need to live up because of what he says. It needs to affect our conversations and our choices and our desires and our relationships and our mindsets and our motives. So as we continue this series in the coming weeks, this was just kind of get us an introduction to kind of what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be unpacking, we're going to be looking at Daniel, at King David, at the Apostle Paul, and at others, to see how they were able to be real in their environment, and to see how and actually sometimes where they didn't, where they messed up, to see what we can learn from these people, and what that means for us when we mess up, but bring it to God. He wants us to be real and to live authentic lives. And it's getting harder. Let me say, it's getting harder and harder to do that in this world that we're in, to be authentic. Because people are always trying to push us to create an image of ourselves. There's a song that I'd like us to finish with. Lee and Fabiano, if you'd mind coming up. There's a song that we're going to finish with, which is, I am who you say I am. And it feels like actually this is a continuation of the last series in a way. We spoke a lot about going back to what God says about us in Scripture. It's really important. I just feel like God is telling us to get a better understanding of who He is and a better understanding of who we are in relation to who He is, who He says we are. Not who the world says we are, not who we say we are. We're going to care very little what others say. We're going to care very little what we think about ourselves. And we're going to judge, we're going to base our opinion of us on what He says. So let's sing this song. You just stand together.